Hello and welcome back to the Land Rover Toolbox videos. In this episode we're going to broach on some of the costs that are involved with restoring this vehicle. We're going to aim to have a basic and very reliable vehicle at the end of our project, and we do have the money readily available to start and complete this if we can keep to our budget. Basically, we have this vehicle here, the 110, which had a galvanised chassis on it. Now, she lends herself to looking her age, which is one of the first Defenders, sorry, not one of the first Defenders, one of the first 110s, 1983. However, to be realistic, we are not going to be able to get her back to an original standard at the budget we've actually got. So, instead, we're going to get her to how we feel we should have her, which basically, in a nutshell, she's going to be a soft top Defender with wolf rims. Now, the colour could be white or it could be green. We haven't yet decided on that, but it's something that we'll have to take into consideration very shortly when we do the bodywork. Just out of personal preference, I would like also to have the wheel mounted on the bonnet. We've allowed ourselves for this complete project £7,000. Yes, I know that is a lot of money, but this vehicle to me is worth every single penny as long as it is in very good condition when it rolls off my drive for the first time completed. Some of you watching this will know how much it costs to run a Defender. The overall project cost could run into £20,000. It's not unrealistic. It depends what type of vehicle you want at the end of your project. Some people might take 10 years to do it and they'll spend that much, or actually invest that much and pay somebody to do the major work for them. The biggest cost factor aside from parts and painting is tools and equipment to do the job with. Now, I've been collecting for years. I've been doing projects, all sorts of projects on my drive, and also I work as a professional mechanic, which does help. I can borrow stuff when I need to. However, if, for instance, you would rather spend £7,000 on a completed vehicle, then buy something for £7,000. Not that you'll get much for that money. If you already own a vehicle, you'll know how much it is to acquire equipment to keep maintaining and repairing vehicles. If you're new to this, then you will have to consider buying maintenance equipment. Obviously, you guys already know this. Hopefully, I'm not preaching to the converted. However, there are a few guys out there who are slightly naive to the fact that when they start a project, they may start with a set of spanners. Well, if that's the case, then you will need equipment, especially garage equipment, lifting and stands, as well as presses and other cutters, grinders, etc., etc., etc. The major part, of course, the backbone of the vehicle is having a decent chassis first of all. Some people will choose a galvanised over anything else. However, a normal steel chassis that has been treated well and looked after during the course of its life could last as long. Well, you've already seen our project vehicle, galvanised chassis. It's had some sort of chemical reaction to the galvanisation. However, it is savable. We're looking as though we don't even need to do any welding on any of the frame other than fitting some new engine mounts to it. If you have a naturally aspirated diesel 110, or you have something that has the 19J turbo diesel engine in it, you'll definitely be wanting to follow us along, because we're going to emulate buying a Discovery using the 300 TDI engine and a Discovery gearbox and bits related to doing a conversion project. One issue that is a bit overrated and people do get excited about their bulkheads is the fact that they do rot out. They are replaceable and it isn't much to actually change one. You'll see here that we've found ourselves a Puma bulkhead. Yeah, I know that you might think it's not real Land Rover, but it is. It's modifiable, and for our project needs and the costs we have at £350, it's worth buying and modifying, keeping the more original or more traditional dashboard which we're, well, generally used to. Luckily, we have the power of paddock behind us, which will help us find the parts that we need and help you understand that we can get this vehicle to a 300 TDI standard without turning it into an utter pig's ear, like this one already was. Right then, so let's be a little bit more realistic about costs and what could be involved. Well, basically, if we look first of all at the chassis, we're looking at possibly, if we bought a new galvanised chassis, we're looking at £2,000 easily. That's just for the chassis without any fittings. Chassis, or the rolling chassis with the buck we had here, this cost us about £700. We could also add another £400 for treatment to make the chassis last another 20 years. However, knowing me, I'm going to try and save as much money as possible, so stay tuned on this one. I would imagine that the engineers at Land Rover really like the Defender. That's why they brought out the Discovery, which gives us an endless supply of engines and gearboxes due to the fact that they rot out. Nowadays we also have the Discovery 2, which also the chassis rot quite badly. I would quote about £400 to £600 for getting something from a breakers, the parts you need, or buying the vehicle complete and then scrapping it or cannibalising it for the parts you need. I would say, however, that once you've got the engine and gearbox, that they also would need to be looked at, stripped down, overhauled and repaired, which you could be looking at another bill of about £1,000 or £1,200. This is just an estimate, I don't know yet, but follow us along and see how much we actually spend on our project. If you have a complete Land Rover, which I'm sure you do have, then most of the body parts are repairable. It's the painting that costs the money if you want a very good finish. Now, you could be quoted up to £2,500 for a overall paint job. This is a stripped down, every panel painted, and then you put the parts back on the vehicle. The cost can actually soar astronomically, so we're going to still find cheaper ways of doing this, and of course we're going to do it ourselves as much as we can. Hopefully by the end of this video series I also will have learned painting skills myself, because it's not one of my trade skills. You'll also want to be considering on a rebuild is axle overhaul. This could cost from £250 to £400 per axle, including the brakes. We also have to consider the steering components. The steering box on this, well, we know that it's leaking because we inspected it before. There's also the shafts, the intermediate shaft, the steering wheel, the switches, ball joints, drag links, etc, etc. This will all need to be overhauled and replaced where possible. So we possibly could be looking up to a price of about £600 on this one. We also have the interior to do, some type of refurbishment, which isn't going to cost too much. In this case, I think we'll be buying seats and then overhauling them with some sort of covers and new foam. The horrendous condition of this body tub makes us think that it's going to take quite a bit of work to get her back to a decent condition. I'll put a price on it, possibly £700 for now, but I'm not 100% sure that it won't cost more. I would assume that when you're watching this, you'll have a complete vehicle, unlike this one, which has the bulkhead missing, the front wings, and a few other bits and pieces. Now, we can buy complete parts second-hand from places like eBay or from breakers, and this way we can then restore them and put them on the vehicle fairly cheaply. Things like wings are just ridiculous amounts of money, which I'm not even going to quote. You can go and Google something like a Defender wing new and see just how much the portions are. Generally, the bodywork is very expensive. We can, however, look at paddock spares, because some of the body panels they do have, doors, etc., are reasonably priced. So we can look at some new options later on in the build. The thing with working on drive, like we are very much seasonally orientated, so we have to leave up the chassis for now and get on with bigger parts to do. We'll overhaul everything over the winter and then go ahead and build our project up when the weather gets better. Hopefully, if you have a driveway and you have a garage, you're very, very lucky. What we're about to do is construct a wooden workshop outside the back of my house, because this tent has now collapsed. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks when we've got the structure up. The first thing we're going to tackle is the LT230, which will be a Discovery transfer box to get our speed up. But we'll be doing the centre differential. This is what we missed out in the last series that we brought out on the LRTV channel. So stay tuned.